They're convinced you made a deal because your luck isn't human. They see you walk through storms that left others broken, and they whisper that you must have bargained with forces unseen. They cannot comprehend that what they call luck is simply a life stitched together with preparation, patience, and relentless refusal to quit. To them, survival without collapse feels unnatural. They expect failure to follow effort, collapse to follow courage, humiliation to follow risk. Yet you keep walking forward, turning every setback into a stepping stone, every rejection into refinement. The human mind despises what it cannot explain, so it fabricates a story of secret deals and dark bargains. In truth, the only bargain you made was with yourself, to never let life drag you into the same mediocrity they accepted. Their suspicion grows louder with every victory you don't parade. They see you remain calm in triumph, almost detached, and that unsettles them more than celebration ever could. Most people flaunt their wins, begging for attention, desperate for validation. You win and carry on. That composure frightens them, because it suggests you knew the outcome all along. They wonder what you know that they don't, what whispers you hear that they cannot. They cannot fathom that your edge comes from silence. By staying grounded, you make their chaos look ridiculous. Your luck doesn't look human because it is born from discipline, and discipline is the rarest form of power. They call it unnatural because they never trained themselves to endure what you endured. Luck is just a label for the uncomfortable truth. They had the same hours you had, and they squandered them. You turned those hours into routines, into observation, into decisions that looked small in the moment, but compounded into something extraordinary. They hate this truth because it exposes their own laziness. If you didn't make a deal with something supernatural, then the reality is harsher. You simply worked while they wasted. You disciplined your emotions while they fed theirs. You studied patterns while they distracted themselves. You learned to anticipate, to prepare, to calculate, while they surrendered to impulses. That gap becomes too painful for them to face, so they call it luck. Luck is a shield for their shame. In relationships, your luck unsettles them differently. They wonder how you keep your peace intact, how you avoid being trapped in cycles of toxicity, how you never seem to be broken in the same ways they are. They don't understand that your luck in love isn't mystical, it's boundaries. You refuse to play games. You walk when respect disappears. You do not chase validation like a beggar, and because of that, you protect yourself from destruction. They mistake this clarity for magic because they've never learned how to detach without collapsing. What looks like inhuman luck is simply your refusal to give energy to what does not deserve it. You don't get trapped because you already counted the cost before stepping in. Friendships are no different. People who betray expect you to fall apart. They expect you to spiral, to lose focus, to beg for their loyalty. But you don't. You adjust, remove them from your table, and continue building without hesitation. They call this luck because they cannot imagine surviving betrayal without bitterness. They can't fathom how you stay focused after being cut by those you trusted. What they don't realize is that you rehearsed betrayal in your mind long before it happened. You knew it was inevitable, so when it arrived, it didn't break you. It confirmed your preparation. That is the arithmetic they can't see. They mistake foresight for fortune. In truth, you wrote the ending of those stories before they even began. Work environments fuel the loudest rumors. Colleagues who gamble with shortcuts can't accept how you keep outpacing them. They whisper that someone must be feeding you information, that hidden hands must be clearing your path. They can't imagine that your advantage is simpler. You observe what they ignore. You cut distractions they cling to. You take responsibility while they hide behind excuses. That consistency builds momentum, and momentum looks magical to those who only move in bursts. They believe you cheated because the idea of you simply being more disciplined is unbearable. Their egos need a supernatural explanation for your human effort. Psychology explains why they call it inhuman luck. The brain hates randomness, but it also hates responsibility. When people see results they can't replicate, they search for external explanations. Blame fortune, fate, or dark bargains. Anything but admitting they could have made different choices. This is why they look at you and see something mystical. They project their guilt onto you. They can't call it discipline, because that would mean they failed themselves. So they call it luck or fate or a deal. It keeps them safe from facing the harsh reality that they surrendered where you endured. Your enemies feel this the most. They plotted carefully, expecting you to fall into traps, only to find you had already accounted for them. They launched rumors, yet your silence dismantled them. They created obstacles, yet your preparation dissolved them. Each time you survived, they grew more paranoid. They stopped believing in their own schemes and started believing you were untouchable. What they call luck is their own exposure. They underestimated you so deeply that your resilience looked divine. Their failure is what paints you as dangerous, not your victories. Every failed strike against you becomes a new rumor that you are backed by something beyond human. The cruel part is that you don't need to defend yourself from their suspicion. Their whispers become your armor. The more they convince themselves that your luck is unnatural, the more they avoid challenging you directly. They respect what they fear, even if they disguise it as ridicule. And that respect, reluctant as it is, clears your path further. Their paranoia becomes your camouflage. You don't need to prove them wrong. You only need to keep moving, while they choke on the stories they tell themselves. Their suspicion grows louder each time you succeed without spectacle. They whisper behind doors, their voices tremble in the dark, searching for explanations that will soothe their unease. They call it unfair, call it unnatural, call it the product of secret hands guiding you. What unsettles them most is not the result itself, but the manner in which you arrive there. No flailing, no bragging, no desperate plea for attention. Only a calm presence and outcomes that speak for themselves. The human mind resents what it cannot measure, and in your silence, they find no tools to predict you. That silence becomes a mirror that reflects their own failures. They hate that you do not justify yourself. They hate that you do not explain. Their suspicion grows because their own confidence shrinks. In their eyes, someone who does not seek approval must be hiding something. But the only thing you hide is the power they refuse to build. Suspicion is the shadow cast by envy. When they see you accomplish what they only dream about, they twist admiration into paranoia. They search for flaws in your process, convinced that a single exposed weakness will validate their resentment. Yet the more they search, the more they uncover a discipline they cannot imitate. You rise early, train your focus, sharpen your awareness, and walk away from distractions without hesitation. None of this feels mystical to you, but to them it looks impossible. Their suspicion grows because their pride cannot handle the truth. You simply wanted it more than they did. People who live on shortcuts cannot comprehend those who invest in mastery, so they create myths to protect themselves. And as their myths grow, so does their fear, because every new excuse they invent is proof that they are further from the strength you carry. Every relationship you enter becomes another stage for their suspicion. When you love without losing yourself, they label it coldness. When you forgive without falling back into traps, they call it manipulation. They do not understand how you can hold your ground while staying present, so they convince themselves that your composure must come from secrets. They imagine hidden teachers, unseen guides, secret doctrines feeding your calm. They cannot accept that you learn by watching, by failing, by refusing to turn away from truth. They spent their lives burying their wounds. You spent yours studying them. Their suspicion grows louder because your strength exposes their fragility. They expect people to beg for validation, to shiver under rejection, to panic when threatened with abandonment. But you simply do not. That refusal to flinch makes them restless. They ask each other, who is helping them? Never realizing the only helper was discipline. In friendships, suspicion grows sharper because loyalty unsettles the disloyal. They see you remain consistent while they scatter. They see you hold boundaries while they cave to gossip. Their suspicion becomes bitterness because they assume no one can act without hidden motives. They cannot trust generosity because theirs was always transactional. They cannot trust silence because theirs was always strategic. They cannot trust strength because theirs was always borrowed. So when they encounter someone who does not need to manipulate to remain steady, their suspicion grows louder until it becomes projection. They accuse you of the very games they play, because it is easier to believe you are like them than to admit you are not. That suspicion will never vanish, because it is not about you. It is about the discomfort of seeing someone who refuses to rot in the same soil they chose. At work, the suspicion becomes public. Colleagues whisper that you must have access to information they don't. Supervisors speculate that you are being favored behind closed doors. They cannot understand how you keep outperforming without theatrics, without scrambling, without broadcasting every move. Their suspicion grows because their own work ethic is hollow. They think in terms of appearances, while you think in terms of results. They waste energy on positioning, while you conserve it for execution. That difference makes them paranoid. They don't believe anyone could operate without politics, because they cannot imagine doing it themselves. They look at your clarity and call it conspiracy. They look at your preparation and call it privilege. Their suspicion is nothing but their guilt made louder, and the louder it grows, the more they reveal themselves. Suspicion thrives where people live in insecurity. The insecure mind cannot comprehend detachment, cannot comprehend strength without noise, cannot comprehend calm under fire. You mastered all three. They expect you to break down, to justify, to beg for understanding, because that is what they would do under pressure. But you don't. You keep moving, and your movement without explanation terrifies them. Psychology teaches that people often project their own tendencies onto others. Liars assume everyone else lies. Manipulators assume everyone else manipulates. Frauds assume everyone else cheats. Their suspicion grows louder because when they look at you, they only see a reflection of themselves, except it doesn't break down in the same way theirs does. That contradiction gnaws at them until suspicion becomes obsession. Enemies grow most frantic under suspicion. They designed traps that never caught you. They fabricated rumors that never touched you. Each failure makes them more convinced that someone is feeding you information, protecting you from their schemes. They can't accept that you've simply learned to see patterns, to anticipate behavior, to predict desperation before it arrives. What they call unnatural luck is simply the discipline of paying attention. But suspicion blinds them. They don't see your patience. They don't see your observation. They only see shadows of conspiracies. Their suspicion grows louder, not because you are mysterious, but because their own incompetence echoes back at them every time you walk away unscathed. They become terrified of the possibility that you are just better prepared, because that truth hurts more than believing you made a deal. Their suspicion bleeds into your reputation. They whisper stories not to discredit you, but to make sense of you. People listen. Some believe, some doubt. But all remember one thing: you unsettle the insecure. That is why the suspicion itself becomes your warning. It travels faster than proof, reaches farther than truth. People hear their whispers and instinctively become cautious around you. They don't know if the stories are true, but they know no one invents suspicion around someone ordinary. That aura protects you more than loyalty ever could. It shields you from weak people looking for easy targets, because suspicion makes them hesitate. Your silence and preparation create an atmosphere they cannot walk through without trembling. The cruel elegance of suspicion is that it corrodes those who carry it. Their paranoia eats away at their confidence, their sleep, their trust in others. They become prisoners of the stories they invented about you. They watch you closely, expecting collapse, and every day you remain composed. Their suspicion grows until it feels like a curse. They think they cursed you with rumors, but in reality, they curse themselves with sleepless nights. You are free because you do not need to explain. They are bound because they cannot stop asking questions. The longer you refuse to flinch, the louder their suspicion screams inside their own heads.